So we've talked about Roe versus Wade and how Roe versus Wade gave women the right to privacy. The Supreme Court ruled that the right to privacy includes your body, women's bodies, and they have a right to privacy and choose whether or not they want to have an abortion. And that's not necessarily government or states' rights supersede the rights of the individual, the woman. So let's look at the 14th Amendment a little bit more and how it's used. And we're going to talk about what's called the Incorporation Doctrine or the legal doctrine of incorporation. We'll get into that. But before that, let's talk about the Equal Protections Clause. The Equal Protections Clause refers to the idea that a government body may not deny people equal protection under law its governing laws. So this starts back with Reconstruction after the Civil War. And the 14th Amendment was the 13th ended slavery. The 14th Amendment gave equal protection to all, again, originally it was African American men. All men were treated equal under the law. And then finally, the 15th Amendment, where all men had a right to vote. But now we apply it to women. There still is no amendment to the Constitution that says women are to be treated equal. And the Equal Rights Amendment may pass very soon, hopefully, but it's been sitting out there for over 20 years now, more like 30 or 40 years, trying to get passed. Now, the Fifth Amendment says that the federal government that no one shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So remember, you're entitled to due process under the Fifth Amendment. The 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, uses the same 11 words called the Due Process Clause to describe a legal obligation of the states. Now, this is really important to the states, this equal protection under the law to the states. So you see equal treatment under the law. And we're going to go into, well, okay, but it says that, but is that actually how it's been applied historically in America? Just because you say there's equal protection under law, and that is why what we're going to talk about is how they actually integrated into there. And that's called the Incorporation Doctrine, or legal doctrine of incorporation. They'll call it by both names. And the Incorporation Doctrine is a constitutional doctrine through which the first 10 amendments to the Bill of Rights, known as the Bill of Rights, are made applicable to the states through the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. So these are your civil liberties, too. If it's in the first 10 amendments, it has to be put into the state law automatic. It's incorporated into state laws. It's legally incorporated, and that's what this doctrine says. And that's why they call it the Incorporation Doctrine or legal doctrine of incorporation, either one. And where this comes from, and this idea comes to the forefront, is the Supreme Court previously had held in Barron versus Baltimore in 1833 that the Constitution Bill of Rights applied only to federal government. Okay, but this case in 1925 called Gitlow versus New York established that while the Bill of Rights was designed to limit the power of federal government, the incorporation principle allows it to be applied to the states. So you have to understand. Let's go over this again. Originally, in Barron versus Baltimore, it said, okay, the Bill of Rights really only applies on the federal level. The federal government has to treat you equal or give you privacy and give you due process. But in 1925, Gitlow sued New York, and they argued that no, under the 14th Amendment, which was passed after the Civil War, that due process clause and equal protection under the law has to be incorporated to all the states. And that's why we call it the Incorporation Doctrine or the legal doctrine of incorporation. And a really good example of this is Oberfeld versus Hodges. And I don't know how familiar you guys are with this case, but it's just like a couple of years old, really. Oberfeld versus Hodges is a pretty new case. In 2015, it's a landmark United States Supreme Court case in which the court held that fundamental rights to marry is guaranteed in the same-sex couples by both the Due Process Clause and the Equal Protections Clause of the 14th Amendment to the United States. So under the legal doctrine of incorporation, it's going to be incorporated and go back to the states. I mean, I can remember we actually went to, in 2013, we actually went to Paris, and they had just made gay marriage legal there. They were ahead of America, and we were actually there during Bastille Day, which is like their 4th of July. And it was really cool. They had the rainbow colors on the Eiffel Tower. They kept playing American music, which I thought was interesting. Kept playing like Nirvana and James Brown coming to America and stuff. But the French are fun, and it was like a million French people. And we're sitting down there. I'm recording this, and they're singing. And then you see the Eiffel Tower goes to rainbow colors to celebrate the fact that they had equal marriage rights in France. And within 2 years, the Supreme Court ruled also to give equal marriage rights to everyone in the United States, and then in 2015.